episode of These Go to 11. Let's turn it up. Hey everybody, welcome back to These Go to 11, an unchurchy conversation about everyday faith. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and review on your favorite podcast platform. This not only helps us to get our content out there, but also helps us to find out what you, our faithful listeners, think. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to These Go to 11. Once again, I'm Nathan Bell. Joining me as always, Greg Dutcher. Greg, what is going on, my friend?
Right behind the wall, dude.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what's going on.
Yeah.
We got some people painting.
We
at
do.
At the time we are recording.
Yes.
In our women's bathroom.
Yeah. Which our recording area sits
yes.
directly behind. So.
Yes. And let's be clear, outside of
yes.
the women's bathroom.
Yes.
We are not recording from inside the women's bathroom.
That is correct. That is correct.
Yes. And normally when we record, nobody's even in the building except maybe Matt, Steven.
Who are typically on the other side of the building.
So today, if you hear a little, like right now, I don't think it's coming through as much on our listeners' end, but I hear the scrubbing of the wall.
Yes.
But it's kind of good it's like our scratching on the walls, dude.
That's
Fits
right.
Our theme.
It does. Yeah. So for those of you, who have commented and noticed, at the beginning of last week's podcast, I said what Greg and I were going to do was talk about our favorite genres, and then we would talk about books.
Yes.
Greg, to me, this is the beauty of what you and I do, because as we got into the podcast, we were having such a great discussion, just talking about fantasy, that we just kind of decided, let's just make this one about fantasy, because that's the genre that I'm passionate about and love. Fantasy, sci-fi. Yep. Again, I said they're kind of two sides of the same coin. Yep. Or opposite sides of the same coin, I should say. But today we're doing something. We're going to take what we were going to do last week, and we're going to make a full episode of that this week. And so, Greg, today we're going to talk about your favorite, which is that horror, thriller, suspense. Those kind of get tied up and mixed into each other. It's kind of clear that what makes something horror versus a thriller versus suspenseful. They're kind of all in there. Elements of those are going to be in those genres together. And so really to say this is a pure thriller, but there were elements where I was really kind of creeped out about it and it spooked me. It's like, right.
Yeah.
And then there are elements where, in a horror where it's building up to something, the reveal of the baddie, or the spiritual force, or the slash, or whatever it is. Like, you're on the edge of your seat as this is going on, and so we're kind of like grouping those together. But talk to us about that. What is it about that fascinates you so much in reading and just kind of keeps you coming back to it?
Well, first, dude, I'm really going to throw a curveball at you and say I've been fibbing. My favorite genre is the Harlequin romance novel. So let's talk about
the ones, but it's the old school ones, right? With Fabio on the cover.
Yeah, Fabio on the cover. I can't believe it's not. But yes, no, they are not my favorite genre.
I knew it.
You are absolutely right. Yeah, I've been thinking about it, dude, a lot from last week because, dude, you made a really good case, and you weren't really even trying to make a polemic case. You just laid out your love of fantasy and Tolkien, and it kind of, to me, it spoke for itself. Why it's so effective. Did write a few notes. Let me pull up my notes. I just want to make sure I kind of stay there. I think one of the things I wrote down are stakes, not Ruth's Chris stakes. I love that too.
Right.
I mean, high stakes.
Yeah.
Horror tends, and from the beginning, to be life or death.
Yeah.
Right. You could write a mild, maybe like juvenile fiction horror that's more creepy, spooky, that never really spells out, oh my word, you're going to be killed and maybe killed violently, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not interested in the gratuitous aspects of how that can be portrayed in horror as much as I am. There's just a hook from the beginning because you kind of know going in, the stakes are high.
Yeah. Whatever
they're facing, the serial killer, the supernatural force, right? Some just unknown entity that'll be revealed later, is a threat.
Yeah.
A threat to you and often or threat to the people you love.
Yeah.
So I think it's emotionally engaging, that I'm not sure if another genre can quite do that, although they blend together.
Yeah.
Because fantasy, you could easily make many cases from the battles and the,
right.
Epic adventures of, the Lord of the Rings trilogy or The Hobbit even, where the stakes are high. But horror is just kind of baked into the cake.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated by that. I think the plus and minus of horror, this is kind of a related corollary, is a good thriller, horror, suspense writer, however you categorize it, is really good at pacing.
Yeah.
So every time, typically what will happen in a good horror story, life is going on as normal, and then there's the kind of slightly weird thing. And what happens? It's a little formulaic, but if there's so many ways to do it to make it engaging and creative, then it is increasingly like a drum beat.
Yeah.
All the more it gets weirder and weirder and weirder and builds to an act 3 if you're using film kind of confrontation or showdown. But the hard side of that, and we all know it, dude, sometimes when the thing is revealed, that's few writers handle that well, because so many times, and you can tell with movies, like, oh, it's not as scary now, I see the thing. Yeah, it's kind of creepy looking, but I've been watching it for 5 minutes and it's not popping out behind a corner. It's now I know what it is. I'm not seeing a sliver of its creepy, scaly body or something.
Right.
That it can be hard.
Yeah.
Because you can lose all that. And so to build up to a good climactic confrontational moment, the good writers do it really well, and it's very satisfying and it's very engaging. Because if you think about it, dude, I've seen some spoofs on this. Why don't the ghost of the haunted house do what they do the last 10 minutes of the movie, the first 10 minutes of the movie?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes they cover that by, well, it plays with its food.
Right.
It enjoys Pennywise in King's World. The ghost essentially plays with its food. Yeah. And he gave it a good story because Pennywise, this otherworldly creature that's essentially a shapeshifter, it seasons the meat that's often used with the fear of the children that it's going to come against. So, okay, well, that kind of works. That fits within the rules. It also allows the writer to build the suspense slowly over time. Sometimes they just, it's more interesting to tell the story that way because we can't have all hell break loose until the final confrontation. Right. But it would be interesting to do like a really short horror movie where they walk into the house, right, and that act 3 is happening right there. Right. It would be over in about 5 minutes. Yeah. So they don't do that. So it's an interesting concept. In terms of how it engages the reader or the viewer. Yeah. In this case, we'll talk more reading since it's a book month. Those are some immediate standouts. I've got some others, but I don't want to. Yeah.
Well, so one of the things that I've been kind of thinking of, in preparation for this and in light of what we spoke about last week, right? I talked about the fact that fantasy is about the mission, right? It's about the goal. The suspense, the horror, there's elements of discovery that are in there that are unique to those that aren't necessarily unique to fantasy, right? Yeah. Whatever the thing is, well, first you got to figure out what that thing is in order to stop it, right? Yep. Then you have to figure out your relation and your position to that thing.
Yeah.
Right. And then you have to figure out, how am I going to stop it?
Oh, right. If you can.
Yeah. And there's almost a natural baked in element of mystery that comes into play with all of these.
Yeah.
And so like, are there aspects of that draw you in as well?
Oh, no doubt, dude. Yeah. I like your angle on discovery. Because often in discovery, you discover things about yourself. Mm-hmm. So the characters that are confronting it often discover things about themselves, their fears, things that they maybe tried to keep hidden that now they no longer can. They might discover a well of resolve they didn't know was there, and that's just a kind of standard literary convention. But the discovery of the evil itself, that ties into something I wrote down. I think horror has always fascinated me because, again, looking at this through Christian lenses, there's only two ways to go. No matter how creative you are with the horror in the story, it's either there because it's essentially intrinsically evil, or it's been conditioned to be evil. So we're back in the old nature-nurture argument.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the reasons, as I said many times, I like King, although I've never heard him, I can't really get a crystallized quote that captures it, but you get it when you watch enough interviews like I've nerded my way through over the years and seen it. King definitely thinks that there's beauty and wonder in the human race, which again, to go back to a philosopher like Pascal, who saw these things from a Christian perspective, he would say, only the doctrine of man and scripture can really explain the complexity of the human race itself. Why is it, dude, we've built these impressive buildings or humanitarian wonders, orphanages, hospitals and places of care and compassion and giving. Why do we have these stories of heroic, lay down your life sacrifice for the benefit of others? And that often happen in war times. And I always tell the story about the young Marine I saw at a political convention years ago who threw his body on a grenade, came through the window, saved every man in that room. They were holed up in a little, I think it was in Fallujah. And just literally took the grenade. Yeah. And everybody else was saved because of it. Just 26 years old, he was engaged. Why do we have those stories? Yeah. And why do we have, Hitler, Stalin, Pol Pot, the murderer, the serial killer, the rapist, the child abuser? And Pascal definitely thought that the scripture, the Christian perspective, has the best answer because there is what we've talked about before with the image of God in man. Yeah. That which we have retained, and we have retained it. Yeah. Speaks of his image. Yes. His love, his care, extraordinary acts of kindness and service to mankind. Yeah. The marred image explains the other side. Yeah. Right. Which is we are sinners. We have, and so you kind of look at both. And why does it make sense? Well, the doctrine of Scripture pertaining to the doctrine of man explains it. So horror is always for me, and not that everybody reads it for this purpose, but one of the things I'm processing at some level is, what's the worldview here? Yeah. How is the evil being portrayed? So let me tell you why I love King. Yeah. He gets it. Yeah. And I don't think he gets it intentionally. I just think for whatever reason, he is pretty clear that something is kind of broken within us. Yeah. All of us. Yeah. Even his heroes. Yep. So you don't have, and this is not contradicting what we talked about last week. Yep. You don't have the really aspirational hero. There's nobody really in King's horror standard stuff. He has written some fantasy, which we can talk about. That is purely good. Yeah. Even his good characters. Right. Like you take a guy like Bill Denbrough, who's the main leader of the kids in It and sort of the leader of the adults when they come back 30 years later. Great guy. He's definitely flawed. Yeah. He makes some choices that why did he do that? He cheats on his wife. Right. For one thing. And it's almost frustrating to read because he's such a good, likable character. Yeah. And I think because King gets it. There's something fundamentally flawed with us. There's something broken with us. The other thing he mixes well is in his stories, you do often have the embodiment of what you would call almost pure demonic evil.
Right.
Again, that's Pennywise.
Yeah.
I'm sticking largely with the It story because it illustrates it so well. But what's brilliant is the really creepy stuff in It is the people in Derry who, maybe because the town has been so influenced by evil, often look the other way. There are scenes where a kid is being bullied, significantly bullied and harmed, and an older couple just keeps walking. Yeah. They don't do anything to intervene. And I'm just fascinated in the telling of a horrific tale in the sense of horror and scare. You really get some opportunity to reflect on the nature of man, the nature of evil.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find that fascinating. I remember years ago, you were talking about this. Actually, you were talking about it, illustrating a point from Scripture, and you were talking about, I think it was Stephen King, and I forget who the other was. It James?
I think it was Dean Koontz.
Dean Koontz.
Yeah.
And you showed kind of their philosophies side by side, right? Koontz, the idea that evil is done to us, making us evil, and King, no, evil's already there and it just comes out.
Yes, and I would say this, and I haven't read Koontz in years. I used to like reading him, and I look, the dude's made a ton of money. I think he's still writing. I'm trying to think of he's less famous.
Yeah,
less of his things have been made into film, and I'm not entirely sure why. In some ways, he's more of a formulaic writer. He's a really great plot storyteller. His books definitely are more formulaic than King. They follow a certain path, but I would say if you read Koontz, and he comes out and says that mankind is good. He puts hope in mankind's goodness. He puts hope in mankind's goodness. And every so often you get an anomaly. Yeah. You get a foreman, Edgar Vess, I think was the guy, the villain in Intensity, which actually is a really good book and story. That story is very simple. China Shepherd is the heroine. And she's a near perfect character. Now, she's had trauma in her past, which is a common, trope that they use to have the suffering character, etc. And it's a great story. It's so tight and simple. And I love the name of the book is called Intensity. Yeah. She sees coming out of a gas station or something, a man shut the back door of his van and looks like he sees a young girl tied up. And I can't remember. It was written in the 90s, so you probably don't have the cell phone era, but there's nobody she can go to. The guy in the gas station has left temporarily. It's this country gas station. Her car is too far away. She has to make a decision. And the decision is, I'm going to, she can somehow get in that van herself. And I'm a little fuzzy on the details. It's been almost 30 years probably since I've read it. And because she wants to rescue this girl. So she ends up keeping herself in. Then she finds herself in the compound of the villain who's got this compound. And it's the showdown. That story, there's a anomaly. Yeah. The bad guy is the anomaly. But China represents the goodness of the human race, and he spells it out in the book. Yeah. And she, of course, brings that to the confrontation. And again, from a story, I found it deeply satisfying. From a reflective standpoint, it's kind of classic Koontz. People are really good, and every so often there's this weird anomaly where there's a bad person. Where King, no. Yeah. King to me is much closer to a biblical understanding of mankind. Again, not that he is intentionally doing it. I don't think King would identify, I'm quite certain of it, as a Jesus follower. Right, right. But I just love how he gets the human heart. Yeah. He just seems to understand it pretty well. And is one who will ponder, why do we do the things that we do when they're bad and they're harmful? And I like that. Yeah. So I'm always going to be more drawn to that. That's even less about horror than the worldview that you bring when you write. But his characters are just relatable. Yeah. likable. You feel like you're reading yourself or people you know. And it's not that he doesn't have the extremely bad people.
Yeah.
Sometimes you find out their dad was a piece of garbage, and it's a classic nurture thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're just bad.
Yeah.
And excessively bad. But even the heroes have their flaws. So it creates a really interesting world.
Yeah.
That to me is more like our own.
Yeah.
Which I like.
Now, part of this is kind of discussing the genre itself, right? But part of this is when we were talking about this, Greg, I said, I wanted to have you make this like almost a defense of King, right? Because I mean, he is, in terms of maybe not on screen, but in writing, the master of horror, right? I think Wes Craven holds the title of the master of horror for on screen.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
But in written word, I mean, really, you don't go anywhere else other than King, right?
Not really.
But fascinatingly, King hasn't just done horror. He's done other things as well. And I think it would be good to discuss a lot of King's work to kind of bring out things that he's used. So, right. I mean, people may not know, right? He wrote The Green Mile, right? And that was turned into a movie with Tom Hanks and
Michael Clark Duncan.
Yes, Michael Clark Duncan. Away. Yep. And then he also wrote Shawshank Redemption. Was that the name of the book, or
the book is a novella? It's called Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption.
Okay,
based on the first poster.
That
he puts up was Rita Hayworth, right? Or was it it was the first one? Then in the movie, it's Rita Hayworth, Marilyn Monroe, Raquel Welch. I think, and but it's Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. Like, what is that about?
Right.
Oh, Shawshank's the prison. Rita Hayworth is the poster. Yeah, he wrote that too.
So Tim Robbins, Morgan Freeman in that one.
He wrote Stand By Me. Which was a beloved Rob Reiner adapted at one of the earlier quality adapters of King's work.
Will Wheaton. And
it had
not Joaquin
River Phoenix, who tragically died so young. And he's really good in that movie. Those four boys were gold. That's based on a novella as well called The Body. And it's interesting that it's called Stand By Me. And people are surprised. Oh, that's a King adaptation.
Yeah.
This past summer, it was very short-lived. A movie, Life of Chuck, which I loved. It starred Tom Hiddleston, Mark Hamill. A pretty star-studded cast. It was made at a time. It was a distribution issue. It's a great movie that nobody really saw. So might find new life on its digital, lifeline. But when they advertised that movie, the few ads I did see, it's interesting. They were like, from the author who brought you, and what they named the book, she just said, The Green Mile, The Shawshank Redemption, Stand By Me, because they're signaling, they're not going to say from the one who brought you Carrie, The Shining, the one who brought these really human, inspiring stories, and they're great. They're great. Even in those, there are horror elements, suspense elements, but they're largely because the body. The whole point is they discover a dead body. And the how and the what and the fear. Is there still a threat? Shawshank Redemption. My word, the evil there is not remotely supernatural.
Right.
But the warden.
Yes.
The corrupt force within the prison system, the Clancy Brown guard, who's brilliant in that role, is terrifying. The threats from within, the group that harmed him. I'll just say that the evil is palpable. And then the Green Mile, there's evil too. That John Coffey, its main character, essentially confronts. And there's no doubt the dude's a Christ figure. I think King actually almost intended to do that one. He's written that. The other stuff he's written, dude, in recent years, and I'm a little in the minority here, he's done almost James Patterson-esque stuff. I mean, King is like 77 now. He's been fascinated with a character named Holly Gibney, who he first introduces in a book called Mr. Mercedes, which is the first of what he calls the Bill Hodges trilogy. For some reason, he wanted to write almost Agatha Christie-esque, James Patterson kind of police procedurals. Bill Hodges is his kind of Hercule Poirot, or one of these famous detectives. He's a retired detective that has to trace down this killer. And people have crapped all over King for it. And Holly Gibney was a lesser character. He's turned into a whole new character who's kind of an Agatha Christie type herself. And I've heard King talk about it. He loves writing. People said, would you ever do something else with like Pennywise? And he goes, I will not. He has no interest in it because he's pure evil. And he's in his later years wants to write about something. And a lot of people are very down on him for it. Like, are we going to get another Holly Gibney story? I'm so sick of it. This woman's boring my mind. I like it. He's such an interesting writer. A lot of people miss the older horror stuff, but he does have one coming out, I'm told, that's a little more of a throwback. And then, dude, fantasy. And he wrote a really, there's a good one that parents are looking for maybe they're kind of the young adult, the YA kind of section. Late elementary school, early middle school would be Eyes of the Dragon. I think it was written in the early 80s. And it is just an outright fantasy story. Like C.S. Lewis, it's very Narnia-like, a little darker, but it was a good story. And then his kind of magnum opus was the Dark Tower series, which is set in another world. It's very influenced by fantasy. It doesn't hold a candle to the complexity and the richness of something Tolkien created, or even Lewis, in my opinion. But it's enjoyable. So he's written across the board, but horror, suspense, and thriller is kind of his bread and butter.
And so where do you see those elements of all of the things he's writing that kind of intersect, right? Because as you know, as an author, your characters at some level are going to, it's going to come through, right? Your voice, your thought process, your worldview, your philosophy, those are going to come through in your writing. So where do you see all of those things kind of coming through and intersecting?
Whatever King story you read, I'm glad you asked that, dude. You're right. That's why I love him. He is so good with character. And that's what holds it all together. Whatever genre, you're normally going to fall in love with his main flawed character. And there's very few carbon copies. As I'm thinking of, a hero in Jack Torrance, for instance, in The Shining, is very different than. I'm trying to think of somebody else. Johnny Smith in The Dead Zone. Incredibly different characters, both flawed, both with unique challenges. But it's always the question: will I do the right thing? In this situation? I mean, it's that simple, but I feel like that governs 98% of everything I've ever read by King. And he just makes you care. I want to know, is he going to do the right thing? And what is the right thing? Maybe that has to be discovered. It's complex. And because the characters are so true to life and you learn about their habits and their routines, and he just writes real life well, I'm always fascinated. Because I feel like, I know this person. And I've said this before. My friend Todd, who was the youth pastor a million years ago at my first church, he and I talk about King a lot. And he always says, sometimes, Greg, do you feel like it's, I know what it means? Because I'm loving King. I'm loving it so much, the way he just writes real life, that I'm almost disappointed when he gets to the thing. Right, you know what I mean? Because he just has a way, dude. Even his book Fairy Tale, which was not one of my favorites, it came out about 2 or 3 years ago, but it's King, so I always love it and I enjoy it. But it ranks towards the bottom third for me of King books. This kid, his main character, is about a 17-year-old kid. Gets it right, gets it well. You kind of learn about what his high school life is like. What he lost his mother and he lives with his dad, and he kind of describes that. You get his routine, and then he gets an opportunity to care for this older person's house, and you're just into it. You're into how he's solving problems. And I knew exactly what it meant once the weird thing gets introduced around page 80, because that one it took a while to get to. You're like, oh man, now we're gonna go into that world, and it's cool. So I just think capturing real life characters.
And that's important, right? As much as we talk about that that ability to look to the people that we aspire to be, right?
Yeah.
There's also the need to look to people to relate to, right? And I mean, this is why Paul in the Bible, like, you know, chief among sinners, you know, I'm the chief among sinners, right?
Yes.
Like, okay, Paul, who's been chosen by God to write the majority of the New Testament, is coming out and saying, hey guys, I'm one of you.
Absolutely. And without any hesitation, even Peter, you know, he could have claimed his, you know, primacy of apostleship. I was the first guy. Well, really Andrew, but nobody knows about him. Yeah, my brother, who cares about that? But when he writes First Peter in chapter 5, he addresses other pastors. He goes, to my fellow elders, fellow shepherds. Yeah. Not the one who's over you, or he views himself as a part of this enterprise, and it's interesting. I'll give you one dude that captures this for me, and I think might interest our listeners a bit. You know, The Shining. Probably, I mean, who doesn't know about The Shining,
right?
You know, you've seen the creepy twins. Probably, you get the idea of the hotel and the weirdness and all that. Probably because of Nicholson, Stanley Kubrick's movie, Shelley Duvall and Nicholson. The movie is iconic in itself. Yeah. Those that know, the book is essentially the same story, but but the key differences are huge. Mm-hmm. Here's why I love The Shining, the novel. Yeah. Now, there's some tough stuff in it. Sure. Just for our listeners, sensitive to their conscience and all that. Jack Torrance is an eminently empathetic character. Mm. He is a guy who has messed up. He's developed a pretty significant drinking problem. Mm-hmm. I think that's spilling over from King's life at that point, subconsciously, who was experiencing in the mid-70s the beginning of a pretty dark period where he wrote some epic books, but he was drunk or high most of the time. Right. Until he was, had an intervention and he gave it up. But Torrance he teaches at a private prep school called Stovington in Vermont, closer to your neck of the woods. It goes terribly wrong. He had a pretty prestigious teaching job there, teaching English. He loved it. Lost it. He's just kind of lost. He's got a wife who's rooting for him, believing in him, but trying to help him find his way, and a 5-year-old, 6-year-old son, Danny. So he takes the job at the Overlook. Yeah. It's going to give him a great opportunity to write. In the book, it's a play that he's writing, and he's got this idea for a play that's gripping him. I think it's a novel in the movie. And Torrance is likable. Where in the movie, and King was upset about this, Kubrick chose Nicholson, who, I mean, I love Nicholson too. Nicholson is crazy almost from the first scene. Yeah. If you remember that scene where they're riding through the Rockies and he's just so weird. Yeah. You know, he's weird with his kid and his wife. Shelley Duvall is like, oh, Danny, she goes, I'm hungry. He goes, well, you should have had breakfast then, shouldn't you? Kind of a jerk to his kid. Yeah. He's saying, you hear that, Wendy? He heard it on the television. He's weird. Yeah. In the book, the forces of the hotel, these supernatural forces, slowly start using Jack because they want to get to his son, who has the shining. Yeah. It's stronger than they've probably ever seen. And it's a tragic story. It's almost Shakespearean because you see it's very slow, the descent where he begins to slip. And The Shining to me is a near perfect horror novel. It's one of the only novels I've ever read, dude, where I was legitimately scared. And I rarely feel that with a novel, a movie maybe. But I remember reading it. Lisa crashed, she went to bed. I'm reading. I said, I got to keep reading, Lisa. And so she's upstairs asleep. And I'm down there with a light, and I'm going to bed, turning out the lights, feeling a little creepy.
I'll turn this light on before I turn this light off.
Exactly. I don't think I want to go total darkness in my 10-foot walk across the living room. And to me, it's a near perfect horror novel. Yeah. Near perfect. Because it's so steady and slow. The ending to me is deeply satisfying. And the book ending, radically different than the movie ending. Yeah. radically different. Almost, and I see why King was so distraught. And from that point on, he never just outright sold all of his creative input ever again, because he was so angry. In recent years, he's had to admit, man, Kubrick was kind of a master, because a lot of people consider The Shining, regardless of what they thought of King, a near perfect movie, horror or otherwise. It usually ranks in people's top 20 or something. But again, it's character. You know, and the horror that they confront. In this case, it is supernatural. But it's also internal. And they meet, and he does really interesting things with it.
Nice.
But we're probably out of time, aren't we?
We're going to end on that note. So we have our giveaway there. So Greg, I'm going to turn it over to you one last moment here before we rock out the Casbah, and let us know. You're going to give our listeners a choice. And so again, 2 listeners, let us know, but you get a choice between one of 2 books.
I was actually, dude, can I regroup it? This gets into conscience issues. Okay. So I made a list here of kind of the King books with the least offensive material. Like Eyes of the Dragon is more kids fan. Great book. I like it too as an adult. Somebody might want to read that. If they want to read it. Somebody, because I talked about The Shining, so I'd actually like to read the original book. You could read that. I'm thinking, it's been a while. So
could we just, in fairness, say, like, let us know what King book you want. So if you want to do some research and you want to see, like, hey, I actually think The Shining, I would really want to do that. And if they want to email me, Greg at christfc.org. Nice. Right, for Fellowship Church. I'm happy, and we'll give away a book, because man, I blab so much, but I think his best story of the 21st century to this day, and there's a lot to choose from, is 11/22/63, which is a time travel. But once you're through the time travel, you're just, a guy goes back because he finds a portal to 1958. What can I do from 1958 onward that would affect the world? Pardon me, 9/11 is probably too far into the future because you're going to age in that world. So he decides to investigate the Kennedy assassination. Oh, wow. And stop the Kennedy assassination. And all I can say, most people would agree, it is one of the most satisfying books I've ever read. And the romantic relationship between Jake and, I believe it's Sally. Is it Sally? Yeah, in the book, is iconic and largely clean. Some reference innuendo, but it's a pretty inspiring. The romance is very moving. One of the most satisfying stories. When I'm done that final page, I was disappointed to leave the book. Nice. So let me know. And I'll get you whichever one you want. Sounds good. It was fun. All right, man. This is great. Next week, we start nonfiction. Yes, sir. So until the next time, we just rock the Casbah. Thank you again for listening to These Go to 11, an unchurchy conversation about everyday faith. Once again, please make sure you like, subscribe, and review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you ever find yourself in the Forest Hill, Maryland area, please feel free to stop by at 135 Industry Lane, and you can get all of our service times and information at christfc.org.
These Go to 11.